I was gonna do a core class today, and it's still gonna be a core class, but I watched a video the other day that was by a doctor, and he was showing some techniques that were specifically like if you get sick, get this virus, you get sick, here's some coughing techniques that you can do, or breathing and coughing techniques. And I watched the video and I thought, well, holy crap, I need to make a breathing video, because this doctor was breathing like this. And I was like, first of all, your spine doesn't have to move around like that when you take a big deep breath in. So I thought that and I showed my daughter and I said, I need to make a breathing video. And then Katie posted yesterday or today, I don't know. I think she posted on Facebook yesterday and then sent her email out today about breathing and your breathing parts, and here's some breathing exercises. And so I thought we would do that. I thought we would go through all of the exercises that are basically in that email. I've got my phone there so I can refer to it, so make sure I don't miss anything important. So we're going to be on the floor for all of class. So you are going to want something to sit on, like a yoga bolster, some pillows, some blankets, something that gets you elevated off the ground, because we'll talk a little tiny bit about position and what neutral pelvis is. And a strap or something. I prefer to do the exercise that we're going to do. We're going to do a little bit of rib cage mobility and kind of see how much your ribs move. I prefer to do that with something that is inelastic. So I like to use my yoga strap for that. You can use a belt, or a belt from a robe works well. Like a leather belt would probably not be my favorite choice. But if all you have is something stretchy, you can use something stretchy. That's the way Katie teaches it, is with something stretchy. I prefer it, and I'll tell you why. So half dome you'll need, if you have one, half foam roller, something to sit on, your yoga strap. I think that's it. Some of the stuff that we'll do on the floor, you can still do seated. So if you can't be on your knees, you can still do it seated. What else do I need to tell you? I think that's all I need to tell you. So I'm going to move my camera down a little bit here and hope that we are in a good position here. You can see the top of my head. You can see to the ground. Yes, that'll work just fine. Okay, so you're going to start seated, and just get yourself into a comfortable position. It doesn't really matter what your legs are doing. But in talking about the seated position, since I finally went and got my pelvis from the studio, I thought I would bring it into class today. So you don't normally think about your pelvis as having anything to do with your breathing, but it does, because we're going to be mobilizing the area above it, which attaches to the pelvis. So when you're sitting, and it's not going to be super critical for anything we're going to do today, so I'm not going to talk about it a lot while we go through class, but I want to show you. So these, and for those of you who are newer, or who, when we talk about some of the anatomical parts, or we use some big words, this is not a big word unless you don't use the acronym, but we talk about the ASIS when we're standing, and we talk about getting our feet the width of the ASIS. It's the bumps on the front of the pelvis. Well, where is that? Like, I feel in there and it's all hard and I don't know what you're talking about. So this is the pelvis. These are the two halves of the pelvis. This is your sacrum in between, which is the bottom of your spine. And there's bumps that are right on the front of the pelvis here. And it's, so when you're digging around and they're trying to figure out where it is for yourself, it's the forward-most bony point. So if you dig around in there, you'll find a spot that kind of sticks out the most. That's these. And then your pubic bone, we talk really about kind of the top of the pubic symphysis, and we call it the pubic bone. It's the pubic symphysis, which is where the two halves of the pelvis meet. So if you look at this from the side and you've got your two ASIS here and the pubic bone, your neutral pelvis is when those 3 points are vertical, when you're seated, when you're standing. If you're on your back, they would be parallel to the ground. If you're on quadruped, they would be parallel to the ground. So this would be face down. This would be lying on your back. We don't really evaluate it too much lying to be in a quadruped position, which is where we'll be a little bit later. But it's not really super critical, and it's hard to evaluate it when you're in hands and knees position. But when you're in a seated position, what happens for a lot of us is we actually sit back on the sacrum and the tailbone. So that's part of the reason why almost every time we sit on the floor, we talk about sitting up on something, because it helps most of us to untuck the pelvis. So what that means is, you've heard of your sit bones. Your sit bones are basically, it's not a part of your body, but it's what the bottom thick bony part of your pelvis is referred to, because you should be sitting on them. So when you're sitting, you can move your pelvis anywhere in this range and still be on the sit bones. So you want to roll forward until you've got those 3 points vertical, which for a lot of us means sitting on something like this round thing is helpful. So I could actually sit on here. Maybe I should do this sideways for you. Oh dear. I could sit on my block. So I'm still elevated, but I'm still kind of post-tilted. Let me move that out of the way so you can see what's happening back there. So this is still pretty flat, my lumbar spine here, and I can just roll my pelvis forward, and because I'm on this firm block, I can feel it roll forward, but that might not be enough, and this might not be enough height. So you can put your half dome under there, and you can see that the half dome is tilted this way, which helps tilt my pelvis forward, which allows my rib cage, so talking now above the pelvis, my rib cage to sit a little bit more easily above the pelvis. So you can put this, I'm sitting on the block so you can see it pretty easily here, but you can put your half dome on top of whatever you're sitting on, your pile of pillows or whatever, and give yourself a little bit more help in sitting in a closer to neutral pelvis. So that all being said, it's not really super critical. So if you're like, I don't know, or you go to sit up on your half dome and you feel like you're sliding downhill off of it, it's all okay. But you might want to think about scooching your butt forward just a little bit so that your pelvis it's easier for your pelvis to untuck. Okay, that's pretty much all I'm going to say about the pelvis. So we're going to talk more about what's happening above the pelvis. So, and I will also tell you, since I put my rib shirt on today, I wasn't thinking when I got dressed that I was going to do a breathing class. I was still thinking we were going to do core class. So this is actually perfect that I wore my rib shirt for you today. So you've got your bony pelvis and you've got your bony ribs, and then in between that you have pretty much the only bone that you have, or the only bones that you have between your rib cage and your pelvis, is your spine. So everything in the middle here is gushy, squishy stuff, but you've got important stuff underneath that. So we need actually this wall of abdominal muscle for protection and for support. For some of us, I don't know if any of you are in the same boat with me, but for some of us, we don't really love how this looks because of what we've been told of how it should look. And I don't know about you, but I've been eating like crap the last 3 weeks. So this is a little bit more puffy than it normally is. So even as I'm sitting here talking to you, I'm actually pulling my stomach in. It's just habit for me. I've been teaching this stuff for 13 years, and it's still, that's probably the hardest habit for me, harder than even relaxing my shoulders. So what you're going to do right now is the perfect time to do this exercise, because nobody can see you. You can all see me, nobody else can see you. And oh, you know what I forgot to do? Let me pin me. I didn't do that in my video.
I have my name across my belly. I like that.
There you go. All right, so, and now I have spotlighted me and made me bigger so that you guys should all see me pretty well. So if anybody else talks, it doesn't move around to them. All right, so what you're gonna do, I'm gonna actually have you maybe not put your hands on your belly just yet. Just let your hands relax on your thighs or down by your sides. It doesn't really matter. And I'm gonna have you close your eyes. And just let your belly relax. Now, I can tell you to let your belly relax, and you can tell your belly to relax, but your habit might be so ingrained that maybe nothing really happened. Or maybe it started to let go and you went and pulled it right back in. So if you utilize your breath to assist you and think about the exhale and think about not just what's happening in your belly, because it's not really about the belly. It's really about the top of the belly, which is your diaphragm. And I'm talking belly as in your belly region, not your stomach organ. So I'm going to use the word belly and not stomach, because your stomach's an organ, your belly's not an organ. So you're going to just think about letting the front of your belly relax, outward, downward, but see if you can take your attention to the bottom of your rib cage, the top of your belly region, and let that drop downward. There's a couple of ways that you can pull your belly in. You can suck it in, so you can actually think of like zipping up tight jeans, or you can contract the muscles around your belly. So depending on what your habit has been, you may or may not be like the sucker upper belly sucker inner, which is actually lifting your diaphragm up into your chest cavity, which is not what you want. We're messing with pressures in here, which not only affects your breathing, but affects other things. So you're still letting your belly relax even as I'm continuing to talk to you. You're still letting this go. Because probably what most of us are going to find is that as you let this relax, and I would say probably 90% of who's on here right now has been doing this stuff for a long time. And I would still bet $1 that all of us are still having to let it go. We pull it back in and you're going to have to let it go again. And there's still more to let go. So keep allowing that to relax. Keep thinking about that exhale, because that will help this all to soften. So we watched, I think I mentioned last week that we watched Big Hero 6, which is a really cute animated movie. And Baymax is the main character. He's like the superhero, the primary superhero in the movie. And he's a big, fluffy, white balloon. Basically, he's like, think of like the palm part of a rubber balloon, of a rubber glove. He's like just like a big, fluffy, full of air, inflatable thing. And the kid wants to make him look more like a superhero, like make him look tougher, because he's very soft and squishy. And he's meant to feel like nice and approachable and soft and squishy because he's a healthcare provider. And he's like your personal healthcare provider. So the kid makes him this suit. And then he has to shove all of his squishy balloon parts into this suit. And he shoves the arm on and he shoves the legs on and he manages to shove the helmet on and get his big balloon head squished into the helmet. He's got all the parts on except for the belly, shield thing. Whatever. It's got like the belly is the last piece. And he's got, so now his belly is sticking out. If you can think of a balloon and squishing all of the parts around, now you've got the belly is even bigger than it was because it's all being squished out of the hole that's left. And then he has to try to push this shield onto his belly to squish everything in. And I was like, see, that's what happens with the pressures. Like, it doesn't just go nowhere. It's got to go in somewhere. So if you imagine taking like a birthday party balloon and having it full blown and then squishing it down into a smaller container, first of all, you'd probably think, well, that's not even possible, right? Because it's got to go somewhere. Where's it going to go? So what ends up happening after he squishes that on is he goes to make like muscle arms and everything starts popping off, right? Because as soon as you go, like if you put a shirt on that's too tight and you go to bend your arm or lift your arm up and it gets tighter, that's what happens. That's what you're doing by sucking your belly in, is that it's got to go somewhere. So it doesn't just disappear like you want it to. It might go up into your chest cavity, which is not something you want to do. All right, so you got your belly nice and relaxed. So now we're gonna work on the rib cage thing. And this belly relaxing, it's not undone. Like, you didn't just transform your habit that you've had for the last 40, 50, 60 years. So this is something that you can pay attention to throughout your day. You can start checking in with your belly. Am I pulling it in? You're just sitting at home. So, just let your belly relax. It's perfect time to practice that. So I'm going to have you do this first with your hands, because you don't have to have something external. You don't have to have an extra piece of equipment to do this exercise. So you're going to put your hands around your rib cage, and you want your hands up high on your rib cage, not on your waist. So you got to make sure you get to the actual ribs. So I actually have my hands wrapped around where my thumb is on the back side. So if that position doesn't work for your hand, if that bothers your thumb, you can leave the thumb out of it and just have your hands on your sides. But if you can get your thumbs to wrap around your rib cage, that'll give you something to kind of squeeze your rib cage in with, okay?
Is it time to put our feet in a different position?
You can change position as you wish. Yes. And good practice for doing so, right? If you're going to sit for an hour, like if you're watching other videos, if you're watching webinars, give yourself a reminder to change your position frequently. So absolutely. Really all right, so you got your hands around your rib cage. And when you breathe in, you should feel your rib cage press into your hands. And when you breathe out, you should feel your rib cage get smaller underneath your hands. So when you breathe in, your rib cage should get bigger. And when you breathe out, your rib cage should get smaller. Now, if you're not feeling your ribs really move at all when you breathe, then your breathing is coming from someplace else. It could be in the belly. It could be up in the shoulders. Those are the two primary ways that we have altered our breath. When the ribs don't move very much, and if you don't do much activity that requires more air to come in, your ribs don't get a natural workout. They don't really have to move very much to get just this minimum amount of air to keep you going. And most of us are operating on a very low amount of oxygen because we don't have to do a whole lot of extra work. So towards the end of this class, I'm going to go through a bit of what I was mentioning earlier about that doctor's recommendation for exercises that you can do. But this is something that you can do every single day. And it's not just for the time that we're living in right now, but if you get sick with anything, if you've had an experience where you've had these coughing fits and you've had to cough and have found it difficult to cough, that's a problem, right? It's a problem to be able to not be able to expel whatever you need to expel. And that's one of the problems with this illness. Also, the less your ribs move, the less your bones move when you breathe, the less supple your rib bones remain. So your ribs are one of the, not your ribs specifically, the ribs are one of the top 5 sites for osteoporosis in the body, top 5 most common sites, because most of us are not breathing very well. So at the end of that doctor's video, at the end of his doing his 10 deep breaths, he was like, and just so you know, I'm a little dizzy right now. And I was like, that's called oxygen. So you might feel that throughout class today as well. All right, so with your hands in this, doing this exercise, I hope you're still breathing. When your hands are your helper here, when you breathe in, your hands are providing a little bit of resistance. So you have something to breathe against. You have some kind of pressure to breathe against. And when you breathe out, when you exhale, your hands can provide a little bit of a squish. So you can actually push your hands together to help the ribs close. So when you breathe in, the ribs open, and when you breathe out, the ribs close. And they do kind of this rotational thing. It's actually a torsional thing because they're fixed on one end and not on the other. So I would like you then to maybe change position with your legs and grab your object, whether you're using a yoga strap or your belt or whatever. If all you have is something stretchy, which I know that's probably not the case with most of you, most everybody has a strap of some kind. If all you have is something stretchy, you can do this with something stretchy. But the reason why I like to do this with something inelastic is because it gives us not only the physical feedback, the tactile feedback, but also visual. So after class, you can go do this in front of a mirror and you can actually watch what's happening. So you're going to wrap the strap around your rib cage. Okay, so I've got it up pretty high. So it's not around the waist, but actually around the bones of your ribs. So you could think kind of like just below the breast tissue where you would wear, like where your bra strap would sit or where you would wear a heart rate monitor. And then you're not going to tie this. So when you're using something inelastic, it doesn't get tied around you. You're just holding it, and I have it crossed so that the one side I'm holding in my right hand and the opposite side I'm holding in my left hand. So I can squeeze it and pull it tight. And I have my hands, the position that I have my hands is intentional. So I have my hands palm up rather than palm down. You can see where my elbows go when I'm holding it palm down. I can drop them, but my shoulders tend to come up. It's a little bit easier for the shoulders to relax down and the elbows to relax down if you're holding it with the palms up. So you're gonna pull it pretty snug around your rib cage. And when you breathe in, the band should get bigger around your rib cage. So if we looked at the circumference before we took that big breath in, it would have been a little bit smaller than it is when you breathe in. And then when you breathe out, it gets smaller still. So you can see how far apart my hands are here with the exhale and how close my hands get with the inhale. Now I can still cheat this, right? Because it's around my bones, but I can still do this with the strap. I can still squeeze it and make it smaller, and I can still loosen it and make it bigger. So I can still get my hands to move without breathing at all, which is now what you want to do. Okay, so you want to make sure that it's moving because of your breath. So when you breathe in, I prefer to breathe in through the nose for this exercise. Hands get closer together, and when you breathe out, I prefer to breathe out through the mouth. Hands get further apart, not because you squeezed them, but because your rib cage got smaller. So you're trying to provide a constant pressure around the ribs with your strap the whole time. So do that again, breathe in and breathe out. Now you can breathe in through your nose, you can breathe in through your mouth, you can breathe out through your nose, you can breathe out through your mouth, you can breathe out like you're fogging a mirror, you can breathe out like you're blowing out birthday candles, So try a couple different ways of breathing out. So let your strap relax for a minute. So take a nice big breath in, expand your rib cage, and breathe out like you're fogging a mirror. Like you're gonna fog up your glasses to clean them. For me, that's a pretty short exhale. Might be different for you. Now breathe in again and breathe out like you're blowing out candles. And when you breathe out, was that different for you guys? Did you have a longer exhale on one versus the other? Yeah? Okay. So if it's not that significantly different for you, work on it, because I would bet that you'll get a longer exhale eventually by blowing out intentionally through your mouth. So not just letting the air out, but actually forcing it out. So I'm actually closing my mouth just a little bit. Like if I were blowing out candles on my 50th birthday cake and I got to blow out 50 candles, your dream comes true, your wish comes true if you blow out all your candles in one exhale, right? So you got to practice this till your next birthday so that you can blow out all your candles. So see, this is a multifunctional class today. Wishes are coming true. You're going to be able to cough up all your sputum. It's going to be great. Okay. So let's go to, we're going to go to a different position. So you're going to go either to a hands and knees position. If you can't be on your hands or you can't be on your knees, then stay seated for this one. And just continue to do the same exercise like we did at the beginning. But if you're able to get onto your hands and knees, if you can't get onto your hands, you can come down onto your elbows. If it's your knees, you can either pad your knees or you can stay seated. So you can always do this on your elbows. This actually works perfectly. You don't have to be up in a perfect quadruped position. It doesn't matter for this. We just want gravity to help. So if you can be on your hands, be on your hands, otherwise come down onto your elbows. You're gonna let your head relax and you're gonna let your belly relax towards the floor here. So you same exact thing you did seated, except that now gravity is helping you. So you're just thinking about letting the skin of your belly drop towards the floor. I'll give you a quick check-in with where your bony parts are here. So you want to have a lumbar curve when you're in this position. If you're down on your elbows, you might not, because you might actually be a little bit more flexed in your spine. But if you're up on your hands, if you're in your hands and knees position, you want to have lumbar curve. So a lot of us get into this position and we automatically tuck the tailbone, tuck the pelvis under, and flatten out that lumbar curve. So you want to think about letting your waistband relax towards the floor, and letting your belly relax towards the floor will actually help with this. So if you're tucking your tail under, it's actually going to be harder to relax your belly. So let your pelvis relax, let your tail relax up towards the ceiling, let your lumbar curve come back, and you might find that an easier place to let the belly relax. When you breathe out, your spine should not change position. So kind of like I was showing you what that doctor's video looked like. When you breathe in, your rib cage gets bigger. And when you breathe out, your rib cage and your belly get smaller. When you breathe in, your rib cage gets bigger. And when you breathe out, your rib cage and your belly get smaller. So your pelvis doesn't move when you breathe in and out, right? So there shouldn't be any exhale, tucking the tailbone, exhale, tucking the tailbone, exhale, lifting the rib cage. That doesn't happen in normal breathing. So when you breathe in, so now I want you to take that exercise, what we were doing with the strap just now in the seated position, and think about breathing in through your rib cage. So your strap just got bigger, and breathing out. Your rib cage got smaller and your belly got smaller. So you're kind of imagining, and you can take a break and get off your hands at any point. You can also take a break and come down onto your elbows, or so you can continue to do the exercises, but be on your elbows instead of on your hands. But you want to spend some time on your hands, because your wrists are another site for a common site for osteoporosis as well, because we don't spend a lot of time weight bearing or weight bearing hanging from our hands. So wrists don't get a lot of bone squish. So imagine now that you do actually have your next birthday's cake with all of your candles, whatever your next birthday is going to be, on the cake, right in between your hands or your elbows. You're going to make your wish on the breath in, on the inhale, and you're going to exhale and blow out all of your candles. At the end of that exhale, you'll probably feel a contraction way down deep in your belly, way down by your pelvis, way down by your pubic bone. That's the bottom of where your abdominal muscles attach. So see if you can feel that. So breathe in again, let your rib cage expand, and breathe out and blow out all of your candles on your cake. You guys are all muted, so I can't hear your exhales. So if you're spitting on your cake at the end, you're doing a good job. That's what you want. You want spit all over your cake so nobody else takes any cake. Okay. I'm gonna check my notes here. So I know I need to do some upper body stuff, but I want to make sure I'm covering all of this, because you guys can always go back and refer to this post that Katie did. Okay, so let's come back to a seated position. So have a seat on whatever you're sitting on. And just like we don't always think about the pelvis as being part of our breathing mechanism, you might not think about your upper body, your arms, as being part of your breathing mechanism, but this is what sits above and attaches to your rib cage. So if you kind of think about how all the parts are connected, when you start thinking about it, you go, oh, duh, well, that makes sense. So there's also not a lot of requirement in most of our lives to reach our arms up above our shoulders, right? So let's just do that. So I've changed positions with my legs just to have a different position. Just reach your arms up. Reach your fingertips all the way up to the ceiling. I know you can't see my hands, but they're up there. I still have them in this position. They're still apart. It doesn't really matter if you're holding on to your hands or not. And just to open up the rib cage a little bit more, let's go ahead and grab a hold of the left wrist and just lean a little to the right. So not so far that you feel like, I'm falling over, just lengthening the left side of your waist. And about bringing the left side of the rib cage up further towards the ceiling. Take a big deep breath in there, expand your rib cage there, and then exhale, blow your air out. Grab a hold of your right wrist, pull yourself back up, and pull yourself over to the left a little bit. Really just thinking about lengthening the right side of you. So not really leaning. So you haven't really changed weight on your sit bones, weight on your pelvis. You're just thinking about lengthening up, lengthening the right side of your body up towards the ceiling. And take a big deep breath in there, expanding the right side of your rib cage. And exhale. Blow your air out. All right, go ahead and relax your arms down in front of you. I want you to find a position where you can actually lean forward. So this is something that's more from that video. I just kind of want to, I was thinking in the side bending, this might be a good thing to explore with you. Did you notice when you were side bending, and I asked you to breathe in, so like this side is going to expand a lot. This side isn't going to move as much, right? Because it's kind of squashed down. There's not a lot of space for it to open up on the right side when I'm bending this way. So your rib cage goes all the way around you, right? It's like a cage, but it's a very flexible cage, or should be a very flexible cage. So if you imagine like a bird cage, which instead of being made with iron bars, that it's made with kind of like some kind of soft rubbery type of a bar. That's kind of how you want your rib cage to be. So I want you to lean forward. So when I do that, for me, I'm actually rounding my back. That's what I want you to do. I want you to round your back. So you're leaning forward. You can lean onto your legs. You can do it that way. If you're doing this seated, it would be even easier. I mean, seated like in a chair, because you just lean onto your thighs. But I want you to lean forward so that your back is actually rounded forward. And I want you to take that, I want you to think about that same big deep breath in that's expanding your rib cage. And I want you to exhale just like you did before, like you're blowing out the candles on your cake. Big deep breath in. Blow out the candles on your cake. One more time, and I want you to feel where the air feels like it's going. Where does it feel like it's expanding when you breathe in? And exhale, blow the air out. I'm curious, is anybody feeling dizzy, lightheaded? I'm just starting to feel it. Yeah, I'm just starting to feel it now. So I breathe pretty well. My rib cage moves pretty well. So whenever I see these videos and I like practice and I do the thing that they say, like I have a pretty long exhale. And so that's another kind of trick that you can use to play with your breathing, is to count the number, count how many you can breathe in and count how many you can breathe out. And see if you can get your exhale longer and longer and longer. See how many counts you can make your exhale. So, you know, if you go to the doctor and they're like listening to your lungs and they say deep breath in, and it's kind of one of these, right? Like, and I'm like, you know, they're like moving the stethoscope around and I'm still like exhaling, like I haven't gotten on to my next inhale yet because they want me to breathe so quickly. And I'm like, that's not how I breathe. And I don't remember what if I thought about this ahead of time, I would have looked it up. So I don't remember what like the average number of breaths per minute is. But the more oxygen you get in per breath, the fewer breaths per minute you need, right? So if you actually have ribs that move well, that are supple, which is it's not just the bones, it's all the muscles that surround it and the other bones that help with this region. And Katie's got it all listed out in this post or this email. So if you're not on the Nutritious Movement email list, I would highly recommend being on the Nutritious Movement email list. So it's all the parts. It's the muscles in between the ribs. It's all of the parts. So anyway, I don't know what my point was. I think my point was just like practice that longer exhale. So did you notice how when you were bent forward, it felt maybe a little bit easier? Anybody notice that it was a little bit easier to breathe in? Nobody? Good. Well, that's good. Good for you. I was going to explain why. And so I'll just give you a quick explanation. It has more to do with this thoracic curve here, right? So just like when I lean over to one side and I kind of crunch this side down and it doesn't move as easily as this side does, it's the same thing, right? So if I am back in this position and I allow myself, my spine to be in this position, I open up what's happening back here. And the way the doctor described this in this particular video is your lungs are more on your back than they are on your front. I don't know that I would exactly agree with that, but this bent over thing, so part of his protocol was like to bend over, like sitting at a table and have a pillow on the table and lean forward and do this breathing exercise this way. It makes it a little bit easier to open up the ribs. So if you needed to be able to cough and get stuff out and get air in, that could be a good tactic to use because it doesn't matter. The good mechanics don't matter. Well, that's not true. How you do it doesn't really matter, except that's not really true because you can do it better if you have more information. Even if your parts still don't move as well, if you have more information, there's still a better way to breathe and to cough that will assist you in this crisis situation. If anybody, I hope none of you have to deal with this, but if any of us do, you'll have some tools. Okay, so we just did some reach up. We just reached the arms up. We did an exercise in class yesterday where we actually did the log pullover. So I had you grab, I said just grab something because it was kind of like off the cuff as it is right now. So grab something. If you did class with me yesterday and you had something that was kind of heavy, I know what I'm going to use. I'm looking over there at my liquor cabinet, and that's what I'm going to use because I'm going to use my bolster and my blanket. I finally got the blanket out of the bag also, and I don't have to use all my throw pillows off my couch. So you're going to build yourself a little bit of a ramp so that your shoulders have some height and your head has a little bit more height. So I'm going to use my blanket for my head and my shoulders are going to go on the end of my bolster. But you can just make yourself a little ramp. This actually works quite well if you're using a blanket or a stack of pillows just to have hold your blanket like in. So you have 2/3 of it here and 1/3 of it here. So that would work also. You don't have to have your rib cage up off of the floor, but sometimes that's helpful. And you're going to need enough space on either side of you that, you know, like keeping your arms distance from your neighbor. Social distancing at home, doing your angels. And then, and have something that has a little bit of weight to it, like, it doesn't have to be something very heavy, but your half dome would be too light. So just something that has some substance to it. So I'm going to grab oh, this feels like this is a heavy bottle. This is a heavy bottle of whiskey. That's what I'm going to use. I don't drink whiskey. It's not mine. That's why it's full. Okay. So we're going to start with some chest opening with the angels exercise. So it's just like making sand angels or snow angels. So you're going to be in a position where your shoulders are slightly elevated, but your rib cage, you see my hand under my ribs, your rib cage has access to relax down towards the floor. So you don't want to have your ribs on top of whatever you are lying on in a way that it's pushing your rib cage up. For example, if I scooch myself up a little bit here, you don't want to have your ribs not being able to drop down because they're being pushed up by something underneath. So that's the bottom of my rib cage here. If I scooch myself down, it allows that to relax down towards the floor. That's what you want. You want your ribs to be able to relax down. And your head is probably going to need to be elevated a little bit higher. So if you've got yourself on a little bit of a ramp, you're perfect. It doesn't matter if your ribs are touching whatever you're lying on. So your arms are going to be out to your sides. It's like you've got a bowl of soup in each hand, and you're just going to make, like I said, snow angel motions with your arms. So again, if you've been sitting and doing a lot of not much, or if you've been doing activities like crafting, sewing, oh my gosh, all the people that are making masks, they need this exercise. Crocheting, knitting. What other crafty exercises might you be, crafty activities might you be doing? Crafty exercises. That's what I need. I need to make a craft exercise video. So hopefully this is feeling pretty good, opening up the chest and the front of the shoulders. So you've got your bowls of soup in each hand, right? So here's my bowl of soup. Now you're going to dump your soup out behind you. So your thumb drops down towards the floor and your pinky rotates up towards the ceiling. So you want to make sure you're dumping it out behind you and not dumping it out in front of you, because you can still get your thumb down and your pinky up, and that would be an internally rotated arm, which we're trying to go the opposite direction. So you want to go thumbs down, pinkies up, pouring your bowls of soup out behind you, and continue making those snow angel motions with the arms. And you can periodically check in with your breathing, because it should still be happening here. All of the breathing exercises that we've been doing have been pretty artificial, right? Like you're not going to breathe like that all the time. You're not going to breathe in maximally expanding your rib cage and breathe out till there's no air left in your lungs and breathe in maximally. Those are all breath for exercise, right? So, but you can check in with it periodically here to see A, are you breathing? And B, maybe how where your arms are affects how your rib cage can move, right? You might find it easier when your arms are down by your sides, but when you reach your arms up overhead, you might find it a little bit more challenging. All right, so now you're going to grab your whatever you picked up that was something that has a little bit of substance, a little bit of weight to it. Doesn't really matter what it is. It can be a heavier pillow. It can be a book. That's what I used yesterday. Or it could be a bottle of whiskey. Oh, look at that. Oh, you know why? It's brand new. It's never been opened. We must have taken this from Big Bear. All right, so if you're using a brand new bottle of whiskey, don't drop it on your head or anywhere else. Don't drop it. So I'm going to hold it. How am I going to hold it? I'm going to hold it like this. So I'm holding the body of the bottle, and I've got my hands wrapped around it because I really don't want to drop it. So you're going to start with the object that you're holding. If you're holding something flat, like a book, like I had yesterday, just let it rest on your palms. Don't grip like the edge of the book. Just let it rest on your flat palms. So I don't know what all you guys have picked. If you have a dog, squeeze it so it doesn't run away. So you're holding the thing up over your chest. Your elbows are slightly bent. They're just less than locked. Okay, so they're not bent really far, but they're not locked out all the way. So they're just less than locked. And you're going to you're moving from your shoulders, not from your elbows. You're going to start to lower that object towards the floor behind you. And there's going to come a point at which your shoulders won't go any further. And then if I asked you to let that object lower towards the floor, the only way you could do it would be to bend your elbows. Don't do that. So you're going to keep your elbows in that same configuration that they started. And once your shoulders don't move anymore, you're going to bring that object back up over your chest. You're going to do it again. You're going to inhale as you lower that thing down towards the floor behind you. And you're going to exhale, blow the air out as you bring it back up. Inhale, lower that object towards the floor behind you. This time, pay attention to your rib cage. Your rib cage should not move at all as your object is being lowered towards the floor. So your abdominal muscles are working here to keep your rib cage anchored, and then you're going to exhale as you bring that object back up over the chest. So you're helping to reconnect your arm to your shoulder girdle to your rib cage. Okay? So your arms are actually attached to your pelvis. Even though I said earlier, you don't think about your pelvis as being part of your breathing mechanism, your arms are actually attached to your pelvis, which is such a crazy thought, isn't it? It's true. I'm not making that up. It's a direct connection. It's not even a like, you got to go to here and you got to go here. Your lats connect from your arm to your pelvis. So this is the long pullover, or as I like to call it, the whiskey bottle pullover. I can't tell you how happy I am right now that I'm using a whiskey bottle for this exercise. I'm very silly. All right, one more time. Lower that overhead. Oh, and bring it back up. This is waking up some parts. I hope you're feeling the same thing. All right, go ahead and set your thing off to the side. Oh, there was one more that I had forgotten about. Oh yes, so thoracic stretch. So you can do your thoracic stretch on the floor, which is the way I'm going to do it right now. If you can't be on your knees, you can do this against a wall, or we did it yesterday in our chair class with the hands on the back of a chair. So you can stand up and do this with your hands on a table, on a chair, on the wall, or you can just flip over onto hands and knees, and it's actually going to be elbows and knees. Move your bolster out of the way. Come down onto the floor. Elbows are going to be in front of where your shoulders are. So, you know, your quadruped, you've got your hands underneath your shoulders. So instead of coming straight down with your elbows right underneath your shoulders, your elbows are going to be slightly in front of your shoulders. Your butt's going to stay up in the air. So we're not doing a child's pose. You're not going to sit your butt all the way back down to your feet. You're going to keep your butt up. Your arms are reaching out in front of you. If you have glasses on, this might be a good time to take them off. And you're going to let your forehead come down onto the floor. You can flip your hands over to a palm up position, and your forearms should be about parallel with each other. Forehead down on the floor, and then you're going to let your spine relax down towards the floor. So you're getting a nice stretch through your spine. And guess what you should do here? Big breath in to expand that rib cage. Long exhale out to close the ribs. Blow out all of your air. Big breath in to expand the rib cage. Long exhale out to blow out all of your air. All right, let's see, how are we doing on time? Oh, we're doing fabulously. All right, kids, let's come back to a seated position on the bolster or on your whatever you're using. I think I covered it all. Yay, yay, yay. Okay, this is perfect. So I'm going to go through this, I guess you would call it a protocol, the suggested exercise series. And I didn't write it down, so I'm just doing this by memory, but if anybody's interested, I'm happy to share it with you. So I got it randomly on Facebook Messenger from somebody I'm not even really actually friends with. But so you're going to, so we're going to do 10 deep breaths in, and we hold it for a moment at the end of each. So you're going to breathe in, you're going to hold it a moment, and then you're going to breathe out. We're going to do that 10 times. And then we'll do, I don't actually remember what the second part was, but I think it was the part that had to do with coughing. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to take 10 deep breaths in. There's going to be a pause, hold in between after you breathe in. Your inhale, pause, hold, breathe out. We'll do that 10. And then we're going to breathe in and cough. And we'll do that, let's say we'll do that 5 times. Okay, that's all we're going to do. We already did the other piece of it that he suggested was the like sitting in a chair and leaning over a pillow. And this is really, he's talking about this really if you already have an infection and your breathing and your coughing is already compromised. But also doing it as kind of prophylactically in preparation. So I don't know if any of you have read, that's also another thing that you can kind of use to check in with. If you're able to take a deep breath in and you're able to cough, then you're probably still fine, because those are 2 things that get compromised with this disease. And there seems to be a bit of an autonomic compromise, whatever the noun of that would be. The autonomic part of breathing gets compromised, which is part of the shortness of breath. So if you can think about these breathing techniques, if you need to do this, again, hopefully none of us have to, but if you need to do this, and you can keep yourself calm enough to think about these breathing techniques, you can get yourself through those periods of that shortness of breath, because you have to breathe intentionally and consciously. The autonomic system, there's some neurological component to this that seems to be affecting people. Okay, so we're going to take a nice deep breath in, and you're going to pause at the end of the inhale and exhale. Deep breath in, pause, and exhale. Deep breath in, pause, and exhale. Deep breath in, pause, exhale. Deep breath in, pause, and 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 exhale. Okay, something really strange happened about halfway through for me. About 5 breaths in, I was feeling really lightheaded, and then it went away. Like I felt good by the end of 10 breaths. Weird. All right, so now we're gonna do the coughing. We'll do that 5 times. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take a big deep breath in, expand your rib cage, and cough your exhale. I don't know how this will go as far as me instructing it, but we'll see. So you're gonna take a big deep breath in. That'll work just fine. Take a big deep breath in. Take a deep breath in. Take a deep breath in. Deep breath in. I think that was 5. Kind of gave me a headache. All right. That should be, look at that, 10:01. It's almost like I have this internal timer now. So this is great. Oh man, I'm so glad we did that. I guess I don't put that down.
That brought some stuff up.
Wow, good. How was that for you guys?
Very good.
I feel
Love it.
warm, but like energized right now.
Breena, you have
At the beginning of class, and it's pretty much almost all gone.
Breena, you have become a breathing master.